The day Karen stomped up my driveway with a clipboard in one hand and a noise complaint in the other, she thought she was dealing with just another loud neighbor and his unruly pet. To her, my dog's barking was a nuisance, a disruption to her quiet afternoon yoga sessions. But what she didn't realize was that every bark had a purpose. You see, my dog isn't just any dog. He's a certified search and rescue canine, trained to find missing hikers, flood victims, and earthquake survivors. That bark she hated? It saved more lives than she's ever touched. So when she called the HOA, demanding the barking menace be silenced, she thought she was filing a victory. Instead, she triggered something much louder and much more powerful than she expected. And trust me, the real authorities didn't come for me. There are certain sounds that stay with you for life. For me, it's the sharp snap of branches under boots, the hum of a radio headset crackling to life, and the bark of a canine on scent, urgent, commanding, filled with purpose. That sound has saved lives. I've heard it echo through forest trails and over storm-drenched debris fields, always followed by the same thing: hope. So when my dog, Ranger, let out 2 short barks in our backyard last spring, and I heard someone next door yell, "Shut that mutt up," I knew it wouldn't be long before things escalated. But I never expected just how far. Let me back up. I'm a former firefighter turned SAR handler. Search and rescue work was my calling, something I threw myself into after I left active firefighting. It helped me stay connected to service, to purpose. My wife passed away years ago in a car crash. I never got the chance to say goodbye, and for a long time, I wandered emotionally, mentally. The job grounded me again. And Ranger? He's the partner that brought me back to the surface. I found him abandoned near a riverbank on a supply run 5 years ago. Ribs visible, one paw limping, barely trusting anyone. But there was something in his eyes. Determination. Hunger. He wasn't broken. He was waiting for someone to help him find his purpose. I adopted him, nursed him, trained him, certified him. 3 years later, he was leading our unit on flood rescues. He's found missing hikers, pulled children out from under collapsed trailers, and once even alerted to a diabetic man passed out beneath a brush pile. He doesn't bark unless he means it. When I retired from active deployments 2 years ago, I bought a modest ranch home in a semi-rural HOA community, Lake Maplewood. It was peaceful, had open green space, and backed up to a small patch of woods where I could keep Ranger sharp with drills and scent games. Our home became our recovery center. Just me, Ranger, and quiet. Most days we kept to ourselves. Morning walks, afternoon drills, evening hikes. Ranger would sometimes bark when he caught a squirrel or during training. 2 sharp barks, then silence. It wasn't aggressive, never random, and always under control. The neighbors mostly waved. A few even stopped to ask what Ranger did. One elderly couple baked him peanut butter biscuits after I told them he'd once pulled a teenager from a washed-out culvert. And then there was Karen. Karen Wellington lived 3 houses down, a perfectly landscaped front yard with hand-painted signs about curb appeal and a Ring camera pointed directly at my side fence. I didn't think much of it at first, until I received a letter taped to my mailbox. It read, "To whom it may concern, the continuous barking from your animal is disrupting the harmony of our neighborhood. I am formally requesting you address the matter. I am documenting the noise and will escalate to the HOA if needed. Since ka Wellington, hoa beauty fipitan su bumititjaya." There was no phone number, no knock on the door, just a printed letter with a thin threat. I shook my head and filed it away. Ranger had barked twice that morning. Once when he scented a bird carcass near the hedges, and once during a trailing exercise. Not a sound after that. Still, I figured I'd head this off. That evening, I typed a short, respectful email to the HOA general inbox, CCing the contact I found for Karen's subcommittee. "Dear HOA, my dog, Ranger, is a certified search and rescue canine. He occasionally barks during controlled drills, all of which occur within the permitted hours and under supervision. He is fully trained and non-aggressive. I'm happy to provide documentation upon request. Please let me know if further steps are needed. Best regards, Adam Jensen." I attach copies of his SAR credentials, local training permits, and his service ID issued by the Regional Task Force. all above board. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 3 days later, I received a formal notice from the HOA Compliance Committee. Violation: excessive animal noise. Recommendation: muzzle or relocate the dog during active hours. Warning: second violation may result in a fine of $250 and removal review. It stunned me. Not just the threat, but the suggestion that a federally certified working animal could somehow be relocated or muzzled. It was illegal to muzzle a SAR dog during active conditioning, not to mention unethical. I immediately filed a response, citing ADA Service Animal Protections, SAR certification clauses under state code, and requested a formal hearing. No response. The following week, I came home from a grocery run to find animal control parked at the curb. 2 officers, clipboards in hand. Karen was standing on her porch, arms folded, smug smile barely contained. "Afternoon, sir," one of the officers greeted me. "We received a complaint about an aggressive dog and excessive barking. We're here to assess compliance." Ranger, who'd been sunning himself under the tree, calmly stood, trotted over, and sat next to me on command. The officer looked down. "This the dog?" "Yes," I said. "His name is Ranger. He's registered with the state SAR unit." I handed over his folder. 15 minutes later, the lead officer handed the folder back and shook his head. "He's clean, certified, quiet, and I trust him more than most people I've met." Karen was still watching, arms crossed, as they pulled away. "I åkte over." "Ma'am," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "If you have concerns, you're welcome to speak to me directly. But you're targeting a service animal with complaints that don't hold up. I'd appreciate if you stop." She scoffed. "This isn't about his title. It's about the noise. People move here for peace and quiet, not a dog barking every time a leaf blows across your fence." "He barked twice," I replied, "during a FEMA-certified drill, within legal hours. It's part of his job." "Well, maybe his job isn't welcome here," she snapped. That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about noise. It was about control. Karen didn't like things she couldn't micromanage. And Ranger, a working dog with a mission, didn't fit her curated version of tranquility. I walked back to the house. Ranger followed, as calm as ever. But in my gut, I knew this wasn't over. And I wasn't about to let her dictate what a hero could or couldn't do, especially not from behind a porch camera and a letterhead. Because sometimes the loudest bark is the one that wakes a community up. If there's one thing search and rescue teaches you, it's how to read the terrain. Not just physical ground, but people, behavior, patterns, where something's out of place, where the danger lies. And after that incident with animal control, I saw it clear as day. Karen wasn't just a fussy neighbor with a vendetta against barking. She was weaponizing her position on the HOA to bully and control anyone who didn't fit her standards. That realization changed the game, and I wasn't going to fight it alone. After the animal control officers confirmed Ranger's credentials and left without issuing a citation, I called up my SAR unit. Not to escalate, but to document. One thing we're trained to do in high-stakes environments is build solid reports. Evidence matters, especially when the truth's under attack. I contacted Officer Blevins, my former team lead, and now the senior coordinator for our state SAR network. He knew Ranger, trusted him, had seen him in action during a flash flood the year prior when we helped extract 4 people and 2 dogs from a submerged RV park. I laid it out plainly. Filed multiple complaints about noise. Ignored certification proof. HOA issued a fine warning and encouraged muzzling a working SAR dog. Then she called animal control on false aggression claims. He didn't even pause. ADA violation, he said flatly. Possibly Section 504, depending on how she's pushing it. Get everything in writing. And loop me in. We've got attorneys on retainer for stuff like this. Within 48 hours, I had signed statements from 2 SAR handlers who'd worked with Ranger, a letter from our training director certifying Ranger's active duty status, and a memorandum from the State Canine Safety Board clarifying that any attempt to muzzle, isolate, or ban a certified SAR dog during exercise constitutes unlawful interference. But I didn't stop there. I went back through every HOA notice I'd received. Every email, every word Karen had written, each one framed in suggestion, but clearly loaded with implication and consequence. And then I did something she probably didn't expect. I filed a formal complaint. Not to the HOA board. Not yet. I filed it directly with the county ADA compliance office and the local division of human rights. I attached documentation, copies of correspondence, and video footage from my doorbell cam showing Ranger calmly performing drills, including the 2 barks that allegedly disrupted community peace. The officials were surprisingly quick to respond. I got an email from a liaison in the mayor's office 2 days later requesting a copy of Ranger's working dog license and a summary of interactions with Karen and the HOA. Normally, these cases are slow, my friend Blevins had said. But when a service animal's involved and someone tries to claim noise violation to muzzle him, they move fast. Nobody wants that PR. As I built my case, I started hearing things from neighbors. Whispers at first. Naomi, 2 doors down, stopped me one afternoon while I was walking Ranger. I saw the truck, she said softly. Animal control? Because of him. I nodded. That's messed up, she muttered. Karen fined me last year for leaving my dog's bed on the front porch. Said it was clutter. Then warned me the next week about a child's soccer ball being left on the lawn. I raised an eyebrow. She's like a walking tape measure, Naomi added. Everything not to code is personal to her. A few days later, I spoke with Hector, a single dad of 2 who lived at the far end of the cul-de-sac. She told me to build a 6-foot fence or rehome my German Shepherd. Said the breed made some residents nervous. Didn't give a name. Just said it was policy. I asked if he ever got in writing. He nodded and pulled out a manila folder from his garage. Didn't do much with it, he said. But if you're fighting her, take it. The more I asked, the more stories I uncovered. An elderly couple, fined for wind chimes exceeding decibel tolerance. A woman with PTSD whose emotional support cat had been declared unauthorized wildlife. Even a military vet who was cited for parking violations after leaving his Jeep in his own driveway for 3 days. Karen claimed it was visually disruptive. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She was cleansing it. Anyone who didn't fit her definition of uniform perfection was a target. And Ranger, loud, proud, and unmistakably trained for action, was public enemy number 1. That's when I knew we weren't just fighting back for ourselves. We were pulling back the curtain on something bigger. I called a small gathering at my place one Saturday afternoon. Nothing formal, just coffee, lawn chairs, and a stack of files. Naomi showed up. So did Hector. 3 other families followed. I'm building a file, I said simply. Ranger's not the only one she's tried to silence. But he might be the one that finally gets her to stop. I passed around copies of the HOA rules, pointed out discrepancies, showed how the citations issued by Karen didn't align with any official bylaw. She's inventing infractions, I explained. That's not just annoying. That's abuse of position. People nodded, frowned. Some took notes. Others offered written statements. Then I told them my next step, a formal case presentation to the full HOA board and the city liaison. And that's exactly what I did. I requested a hearing at the next HOA meeting, as allowed under Section 7A of the Community Charter. I submitted my documentation 10 days in advance, along with printed testimony, training certifications, and signed neighbor statements. But I didn't stop there. I reached out to the local newspaper, not the front page kind, the community blog that covers bake sales, fundraisers, and local happenings. I offered an off-the-record story about a decorated service animal being targeted for nuisance barking. They bit. The article went live 2 days before the hearing, titled, Lake Maplewood HOA Faces Criticism Over Certified Search and Rescue Dog Complaint. It wasn't sensational. It didn't need to be. It was factual, quiet but firm. And it asked the one question Karen couldn't answer. What kind of neighborhood punishes a dog for doing the job that saves lives? By the time the HOA hearing rolled around, we had support. And Karen, she had scrutiny. She tried to block the hearing, claiming I hadn't submitted paperwork correctly. But the board overruled her. When she tried to dismiss neighbor statements as emotional hearsay, the city liaison reminded her that community feedback is protected under the charter. I watched her face tighten with every slide I presented. Ranger in training, side-by-side comparisons of approved noise limits, copies of fabricated violations she'd authored, and testimonies of neighbors she'd targeted. I ended with a quote from the local SAR manual. A bark in the woods can mean life or death. Respect the voice of the ones who are trained to save. The room went quiet. Then the liaison stood up and said, "This case is no longer about a dog. It's about abuse of process." Karen tried to speak, but the board adjourned before she could. Outside, as I clipped Ranger's leash back on, a neighbor I didn't even know walked up, patted his head, and said, "Good boy. We've needed this for a long time." I expected Karen to retreat quietly. I underestimated her ego. After the HOA hearing didn't go her way, most people would have taken a breath, maybe done some self-reflection. Not Karen Wellington. She doubled down. The week following the meeting, flyers began appearing in mailboxes. Not official HOA letters, homemade ones. Glossy paper, too much ink, and a title in bold red. "The Truth About Ranger, What the HOA Won't Tell You." Inside was a barrage of exaggerated claims that my dog barked nonstop, had aggressive tendencies, and was a liability to the safety and serenity of the community. She even included a photo of Ranger mid-drill, leaping over a training hurdle, teeth bared in concentration, framed like a mugshot. The flyer was anonymous, of course, but the phrasing was familiar. The passive-aggressive tone, the underhanded warnings, the fake neutrality. I would have bet my mortgage it was her. Then came the Facebook posts. On the unofficial Lake Maplewood neighborhood page, a new account popped up, no profile picture, named Lake Mom 99. She began posting concerns about homeowners using the area to train aggressive dogs. The posts were vague, but clearly targeted. "She's not just lashing out," Naomi texted me. "She's spiraling." I didn't take the bait. I documented everything. Took screenshots, cataloged flyer drop-offs with timestamps from my door cam, and recorded anything that mentioned Ranger. Then I did what Karen feared most. I made it all public. I forwarded the flyers, screenshots, and complaint history to the local newspaper that had run the original story. I also sent a copy to the State SAR Alliance, an umbrella organization that supports canine training and legislation for search and rescue animals. The journalist, same one who'd covered the first article, called me within hours. "This is textbook retaliation," he said, "and it's coming from someone in a leadership position. We're running it." The headline appeared online 2 days later. HOA leader accused of targeting certified search and rescue canine. Community pushes back. This time, it wasn't a quiet blog post. This time, it hit the front page of the Sunday Local. The article laid everything out: the bogus citations, the animal control visit, the training certifications, the documented history of HOA complaints, and now, the retaliatory flyers. They even interviewed Hector and Naomi. A quote from Mrs. Lenz, the elderly widow whose wind chimes had once earned her a fine, read, "If barking twice a day to save lives is a problem, then the problem isn't the dog. It's whoever thinks silence is more valuable than safety." Karen's name was printed clearly and without embellishment. She was furious. That same day, she emailed the HOA board demanding a cease and desist be filed against me for defamation and coordinated media harassment. The board declined. 2 of the members, both of whom had served quietly under her during her long tenure, resigned within 72 hours. And then, the kicker, the State SAR Alliance released a public statement. It was short but sharp. "We support K9 Ranger, an active search and rescue dog, and his handler Adam Jensen. Interfering with a certified SAR dog in any setting, including community enforcement actions, sets a dangerous precedent. SAR dogs do not disturb peace. They protect it." The HOA tried to calm the storm with silence, but the community wouldn't allow it. An emergency hearing was scheduled the following Tuesday, not by Karen, but by the remaining board members, who were now scrambling to preserve what was left of their credibility. I showed up with Ranger, this time in uniform. His vest was on, badge stitched into the side. I brought copies of every credential again, but I didn't need to hold them up, because this time the parking lot was full. Dozens of residents stood outside the rec center before the meeting started. Some held signs, Nothing wild, just clear messages. Let Ranger bark. Safety has a sound. Real heroes wear fur. Reporters came. So did a local city council representative. Even the regional SAR liaison sent a representative to observe. When I walked through the doors with Ranger at my side, the crowd parted. A few people clapped. Others just nodded solemnly, like they knew what this really was, the moment the bully got dragged into the light. Karen arrived 10 minutes late. She looked smaller than I remembered. Same perfectly pressed outfit. Same clipboard. But no air of control this time. Just a nervous energy she couldn't hide. The board opened with a statement. We are here to address concerns brought forth by multiple residents regarding misuse of enforcement powers, retaliation, and the treatment of certified service animals within our community. They turned to me and asked if I had anything to add. I didn't prepare a speech. I looked around at the faces in the room, neighbors, teammates, even strangers, and said, Ranger's bark has led rescuers to trapped children and missing hikers. If 2 barks during a drill are too much for this neighborhood to handle, maybe the problem isn't the dog. Maybe it's the silence we've let go on for too long. There was a pause, then applause. Karen tried to respond. She really did. She raised her hand and rattled off phrases like neighborhood cohesion, nuisance protocol, and standards of civility. She even tried to pivot and say she supported first responders, just not disruptive behavior. But someone finally asked her directly, Did you distribute those flyers? She paused. No comment, she said. Wrong answer. The board asked the next question. Did you issue any citations without formal approval from the full committee? Again, silence. She tried to shift blame, said the rules were unclear, that she was acting in the best interest of community aesthetics. The room turned. By the end of the meeting, a motion was introduced, not just to investigate Karen's actions, but to temporarily suspend her from any enforcement-related duties pending results. The vote passed unanimously. The next day, the HOA issued a formal apology to me and to Ranger. We regret the actions taken by members of our board that misrepresented our values and violated procedural fairness. We acknowledge Ranger's contributions to public safety and his rights as a working animal. The apology was posted on the community bulletin board, emailed to every resident, and even shared online, where it was reposted dozens of times with tags like hashtag Justice for Ranger and hashtag Let Him Work. Karen didn't attend the next meeting. 3 weeks later, she resigned for personal reasons. And just like that, the voice that once tried to silence a hero went silent herself. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The board began reviewing HOA bylaws, starting with noise ordinances. A clause was added explicitly protecting working animals, and a neighborhood dog committee was formed, this time with input from actual trainers and veterinary experts. People started coming by just to say hello. Kids asked if they could pet Ranger. One family left a chew toy on our porch with a note that said, "Thank you for your service." For the first time since moving in, I felt like I wasn't just surviving here. I was part of it, all because of a bark, and a woman who thought her clipboard was more powerful than a service vest. The day Karen Wellington officially stepped down from the HOA board, no one held a parade. But something far better happened. The neighborhood exhaled. Her resignation email was terse and impersonal. Personal reasons, prior obligations, and need for a break from leadership, but everyone knew the truth. She hadn't left because she was tired. She left because she lost control. And the leash she tried to yank, it had led straight back to her. The board accepted her departure unanimously. There was no speech, no plaqué, just silence, the peaceful kind this time. In her absence, things changed quickly. The board, now with fresh voices and clear eyes, began revisiting every outdated policy that had been used as a weapon. At the very next HOA meeting, they introduced the Working Animal Protection Clause, written in plain language and voted in without resistance. No certified service, emotional support, or working animal shall be subjected to HOA enforcement action without first consulting applicable federal, state, and municipal law. Certified animals shall not be penalized for job-related behavior conducted within legal timeframes and approved training guidelines. The clause was clear, fair, and long overdue. But it didn't stop there. The HOA followed up with a public pledge of support for emergency personnel and service animals residing in the neighborhood. They partnered with the local SAR Alliance to host a community Canine Day, an open event where residents could meet active dogs, learn about their training, and ask questions. That day, Ranger sat proudly in his vest near the pavilion, tongue lolling and tail thumping with every child who came up to greet him. He wasn't just tolerated now, he was celebrated. At the height of the event, the mayor's office presented Ranger with a small service medal, not official government issued, but a symbolic gesture recognizing his years of service and the role he played in bringing the community together. They gave me a certificate too, though I didn't need it. Seeing Ranger sit calmly while a 4-year-old girl wrapped her arms around his neck was reward enough. "You really live here?" one neighbor asked, scratching Ranger behind the ears. "Can't believe I never knew what he did." I smiled. He doesn't need to be loud to be heard. Just has to be where he's needed. After that, things felt different on our street. Where once there had been cold glances and clipped greetings, now there were waves from driveways. Folks stopped to ask about scent tracking or how dogs are trained for disaster zones. A few neighbors even joined the volunteer registry for civilian search support, offering their time in case of local emergencies. Kids from nearby blocks would ride their bikes past my place just to see if Ranger was out in the yard. One even left a painted rock near his water bowl that read, "Thank you, Ranger, for keeping us safe." Even the HOA board seemed changed. They began conducting open-door workshops on policy revisions, inviting community feedback, something that never would have happened under Karen's rule. And instead of handing out citations like candy on Halloween, they launched a Friendly First initiative. Warnings became conversations. Complaints became chances for understanding. It wasn't perfect, of course, but it felt like progress. And in the middle of it all, Ranger still did what he always did: trained, patrolled, and quietly watched. His barks, still rare and measured, no longer drew frowns or threats. If anything, they brought people to the window with curiosity. "That's a good sound," one neighbor said to me. "Means everything's okay." I nodded. Or that something's about to be. Because Ranger's bark isn't just noise. It's alert, awareness, a signal that someone is paying attention. It's a reminder that not all watchdogs live behind fences or sit on patrol. Some sleep at your feet. Some nudge your hand when you've had a hard day. Some save lives before you even realize danger is nearby. In this neighborhood, it learned that lesson the hard way, through one woman's pettiness and one dog's patience. In the end, Karen's silence was more powerful than all her noise. Because when she left, peace didn't just return. It settled in, wrapped in fur, with a badge stitched to its side. Sometimes what sounds like barking is actually the sound of someone being saved. Karen heard noise. That sharp, purposeful bark she couldn't stand. That was the voice that's led rescuers to flood victims, missing hikers, and trapped children. But she didn't hear that part. She didn't hear the stories, the hours of training, the lives Ranger's voice has helped rescue. To her, it was just a disruption to her morning tea. But to the rest of us, it was something far more valuable: the sound of safety, of service, of a dog doing what he was born to do. Ranger never barked at her. He didn't growl. He didn't lunge. He simply stood his ground, just like I did. Because if someone tries to bully you with rules they don't even understand, make sure they meet someone who actually knows what duty, law, and loyalty look like. Ranger didn't need to prove anything. But when the time came, he reminded this entire community what real protection sounds like. And now, he's not just my partner. He's our neighborhood's quiet guardian. So tell me in the comments, has anyone ever tried to shame you for something they didn't understand? Especially under the name of HOA rules or neighborhood order? I'd love to hear your story. Because sometimes what they call a nuisance is actually the sound of a hero at work. And heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear fur.